Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I am doing a live stream on X Spaces and doing a recording for the different channels. Okay, so this is January 7th, and I'm going to be talking about just quickly here before I set up the live stream with the markets. But I want to give my perspective on H5N1, the human hMPV virus that's going around in Asia, and the fog. I talked to Gail, the ones that have been watching the channel for a while. They know who Gail is. So I was talking to Gail yesterday, and we had an interesting conversation. So I want to kind of summarize that conversation I had with her and how it parlays into the different pathogens that I'm concerned about. The two current pathogens that I'm concerned about are the metapneumovirus and the highly pathogenic H5N1. But I was also, months ago, concerned about Mpox. I'm still concerned about Mpox, but that's kind of on the back burner right now. So let me summarize the conversation I had with Gail. All right. And part of it is metaphysical, and part of it is trying to use scientific principles to explain what's going on. One part is that it is the fog is man-made. The other part of the conversation was perhaps the fog's not man-made. We don't know. All right. Hopefully someone has sampled the fog particulates and is doing an analysis, a mass spec analysis and a microscopic analysis. The problem that I have with it being man-made is that people were saying that there's particulate in the air, and that there was a smell of plastic. Now that sounds like it would be man-made. The problem that I have with that is that the area of coverage of the fog. Now think about, we know that chemtrails are taking place, all right? It's way up in the atmosphere, and they have to pour tons of stuff into the atmosphere and, do with some sort of grid pattern for it to slowly dissipate. The fog wasn't like that at all. The fog across the country, on the West Coast, on the East Coast, areas of the Midwest, in the Southeast of the country, had dense fog. Some areas had the plastic smell, some didn't. So what is that? Doesn't seem to me, with standard technology, to be able to produce that much fog in such a quick amount of time over such a large area. So but I could play devil's advocate either way. Is it metaphysical? Are we in, and I'll explain why I say that, are we in kind of like a series of plagues? Or is this man-made? It was around the world. It wasn't just in the United States. Now, is there some sort of HARP technology that can create dense fog? But how do you create the particulate or the smell of plastic? Now, not everyone had the smell of plastic. Some reports were saying that the fog, when it hit pools that had chlorine in it, that it turned into a foam. Well, that sounds like a chemical reaction. So what is it? All right. So if there's some sort of, I just don't know if we have the technology to be able to create such fog so quickly with some sort of particulate. All right. Something that seems to be chemically or organic. Now, Is it possible that ET, extraterrestrials are attacking human beings in some weird stealthy way with, advanced technology and beams and, we know the Maui fire and all this? Probably not. All right. Is it a possibility? Yeah, it's possible, but the probability is so low. So I don't want to say it's ET, but so I'm just taking that off the table. But is the United States using, or another country using, advanced technologies to do something? Now, most likely because of the Defense Department spending in research and development, the United States is probably the only one that would have this kind of technology. I don't think Russia would have it, and I don't think China would have it. So if it's human produced, the fog, then it's most likely created by the United States. Because as the United States, what sort of, these are just questions, first principle, ask questions, move forward, understand how you know the knowledge, and then just kind of move forward with the thinking. That's the approach that I'm taking with this video. So there's going to be some questions as I'm going through the video to try to organize the thoughts. So one thought with the conversation with Gail is that's metaphysical, that we're in some sort of plague-oriented kind of era, similar to what was in the Bible. There were 10 plagues. Not all 10 plagues were, in a very short amount of time. My understanding is the 10 plagues took just under a year to happen. So it wasn't like one plague one day, the next day was another plague. It didn't happen that way. All right, in Egypt, it was over just under a solar year. So are we in a multi-year era of plagues that are metaphysical, that something's changing in the world? Now, some proof to that concept are twofold. Certain things that have happened, that have been written down for thousands of years, took place in September of 2024. And in the Zohar, in volume 3, important pages to read are page 100 to about 230, 220. But specifically on page 212, it talks about a star. But it's really a comet or an asteroid, but a star that's falling or crossing the sky, and there's a certain event that's supposed to take place in September. That event took place in September through the assassination of, I believe it was the Hezbollah leader in the building that was hit. And there was a certain number that is conveyed. I'd have to research exactly. I think it was like I think it's like 81 or 84, something like that. And that was the number of bombs that Israel used to destroy, to kill him. Right. So there is something metaphysical happening in the Middle East. Now, is it possible that generals in Israel decided to do their operations that is in sync with some of the text that's in the Zohar, volume 3, page 212? Maybe. Or is it that there was something written thousands of years ago that was stating that certain events are going to be taking place, and we're living in those events? If that is the case, big question, it's a big question if, right? But if that is the case, then there's a higher probability that the fog is metaphysical. I don't know, because I don't know of anyone that has done mass spec on the fog material, the particulates, or some sort of chemical analysis or microscopic analysis. What is noticeable, people have been getting sick. Now the question is the fog related to the sickness or not? Okay, so we have an issue where fog could be metaphysical, or the fog could not be metaphysical and just man-made, just created. I don't believe it's a natural phenomenon because of the plastic smell or you know, the reports of this chemical reaction on pools. But the thing is that we're living in an age. We're really at the very end where you can kind of believe certain news, but because of AI, we're at the point where you can't believe anything anymore. Nothing. Everything can be just artificial. So we're right at that change where you know, when a news report happens, you just don't know. You don't know if the video's true. You don't know if the person talking is not AI generated or anything like that. So we only have months, not years, months before communication between human beings, electronic communication between human beings, can be considered a source of information. And it's going to get to a point where only person-to-person communication can be considered truthful, with validation of what someone's saying through, you know, looking at older sources. But anything that's newer, and those older sources would have to be printed sources. But we're living in an age where we're right at the end of being able to trust anything. Okay. But we're also moving into an age where this whole out of Pisces into Aquarius kind of thing. Now there's a Kabbalistic thought here. And this is part of the reason why I think the fog may be metaphysical. All right. The ages, Aries, Pisces, and Aquarius, are tied to three main prophetic things. All right. Aries is tied to the sacrificial lamb, not the lamb, the ram, the sacrificial ram for Abraham when he was going to sacrifice his first child, Isaac. All right. So the beginnings of Aries is tied to Abraham's sacrifice and the Jewish religion. Pisces is the end of the temple times, Temple 1 and Temple 2, for Jerusalem, and the beginnings of Christianity. Okay, so Aries' animal is a ram. So the Jewish religion is tied to the ram. Also, the ram's horn is blown for the shofar. So it's all tied to Aries. Now, Pisces is a fish. So Christianity is tied to fish. The end of Pisces is happening. So it's just like how the end of Aries took place and into Pisces, the end of Christianity is happening too. Now something's going to morph. The morphing is going to go into Aquarius. Now there's some weird things about Aquarius. The animal for Aquarius is an owl. It's a bird. And then you start hearing in the news, well, wait a minute here. There's a lot about bird flu. There's a lot about avian this and avian that. We have avian flu, avian influenza. We have avian metapneumovirus that spun off and created human metapneumovirus. So the hMPV is tied to avian. It's tied to a bird. So we also have another data point talking about geese dying in mass, about 200 of them in Pennsylvania, in I think it's a Lehigh, I think is it Lehigh or Leh? Lehigh, I think it's called, township in Nazareth in Pennsylvania. Well, these are biblical cities that are tied to Christianity. So something's happening. Now the question is, did the fog create increased deaths for the birds in Pennsylvania? Maybe. But why don't we see mass deaths of other birds in areas that have the dense fog? We don't see that, or at least hasn't been reported yet. Okay, so, but there's some sort of particulate matter in the air. Okay, so let me go back. I know this sounds like I'm skipping around here, but let me go back to Aquarius. Aquarius is an age where there's high levels of technology, which we're at. Elon Musk is saying that the breakout for AI is 2027. That might be happening. Sam Altman said that artificial general intelligence is 5 years away. So in the age of Aquarius, because of high levels of technology, it's going to happen. Another element of the age of Aquarius is genderlessness in the society, a push for genderlessness, or what we would call gender dysphoria. That's happening. So there's something, and I'm not into woo at all. I'm not into the whole woo, kind of like new age astrology thing. I'm not really into that. I mean, I listen to people that know the subject and it's interesting, but something's up. Something's happening that may be the right. All right. I try to keep the scientific hat on, but I do realize that not everything can be explained through science, and that there's some sort of divine or what I'll call the metaphysical. All right. Something's happening. Something's transitioning. And people that are sensitives, that are in these different religions, either in Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, or even Buddhism, are sensing something is transitioning. And it's fast. It's not something that is going to be slow. There's a fast, quickening thing happening. Okay. So that's where the gut feeling is coming from with, all right, well, it's a kind of metaphysical. It feels like something is happening around us that is metaphysical. Now, maybe it's a combination of human things that are happening and the metaphysical happening at the same time. That could be. It's kind of mixing the signal, or mixing this, being able to understand it. But the fog is very odd. And there's a lot of people that are getting sick post-fog. But if I put my scientific hat on, I could explain that without the fog. I could explain it as, well, in the season for December and January, it's typically a surge for pathogens to be floating around in the society, especially during the holiday season. And there's a surge in cases, independent of a fog. So that could be an explanation of it. My gut feeling on this is that the fog, even if it's metaphysical or man-made, but I can't explain how man would be able to make the fog, is disrupting birds' immune system. So they're going to be more susceptible to sharing diseases, and animals will be more susceptible. Now, is it transitory? Probably it would be, this irritation. But with birds flying around, they can transmit farther distances versus cows. They just stay in a very local area, or horses. right? So it's animals that roam or can fly that would be problematic with this. All right, so the fog somehow, some way is disrupting their immune system, and they can help spread within their flock this H5N1, maybe mutate. Okay, people that are exposed to the fog could have had some sort of disruption with their pulmonary system that makes them slightly weaker. Slightly, I'm not saying massively weaker, but slightly weaker to be able to contract these diseases that are normally endemic in their population. RSV, SARS-CoV-2, rhinovirus, enteroviruses, right? Okay. So we have maybe a weakening of the immune system from the fog, a weakening of the immune system in the avian population that are just wild, and potentially a weakening of the farm animals that were exposed to the fog. That's a possibility. We don't know because we don't have data on the chemical analysis of the particulates. But everyone that documented the fog said there were particulates. Everybody. So what's going on? Something odd. And it wasn't just in a local region, it was all over the world. And it was also at the same time that during the drones, you had all the drone news, and then all of a sudden the fog, and then all of a sudden you don't hear too much about the drones. There's some reports, but nothing. It was like right before, what were some of the data points? We had all this drone activity, and then Congress was trying to pass the omnibus bill. Then all of a sudden the drone activity declined, and then shortly after that the fog came in. It's my memory of that. I don't believe the fog came in before the omnibus bill passage. So that's the metadata, right? That's the data set we're working with. Now, are they correlated? Who knows? We don't know for sure. But you don't hear much about drones anymore after the fog. You don't hear much about the drones anymore after the omnibus bill was passed. Why? Now, I think what the drones were testing operations. Some of the drones, not all of them. Some of the drones were military testing operations for a conflict in the Middle East in 2025, where the United States and Israel are going to work together to knock out Iran. That's what I think is happening. Don't know for sure, but I do know this. The number of incidents for drones radically went down after the omnibus bill, after the bill was passed. I mean, obviously it was chopped down, but and then this fog. Okay, there's a lot of people sick after there was a surge after Thanksgiving. The data is trickling in because it's lagging. There's definitely a surge of different viruses, different bacteria. So people are getting different types of colds around the country. There's a surge of SARS-CoV-2. What's interesting is the surge is not in high density areas like New York. It's in other areas. What's happening in New York is rhinovirus, RSV, influenza-like, and influenza. So what is influenza-like? Well, that's a catch-all for they don't know. All right. Now, fast forward to China. Okay. What's going on in China? China is stating that they have a surge of hMPV. There's 1,000 hospitals that are dealing with patients. Well, that at the very minimum, there's 1,000 cases, one case per hospital. But they wouldn't be putting that in the news unless there's a lot of people per hospital. So it's got to be a lot more than 1,000. In Malaysia, there are 327 people that had contracted MPV, human MPV. Again, remember, human MPV is a spinoff of avian MPV. So it's related to birds. All right, so, but this human version of it is at 327 cases in Malaysia. Last year, the year before, I should say, the year before, comparative analysis was around 225. Now, it seems like it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but why is China stating something and then hiding the data? Why? Then India is saying, well, the last I looked, it was 6 cases, all pediatric, very young, 3 months, 8 months, 5 months type stuff. So MPV has been floating around endemically for a while. It was discovered in 2001. Now, how does it work? MPV shuts down the innate immune system in the cell. It infects the cell and shuts it down. So the cell can't fight it, and then it just mutates. So if you are geriatric and you have a compromised immune system, it's hard to fight it. If you're very, very young and your immune system isn't developed yet, it's hard to fight it. Now, it has 4 proteins that shut down the innate immune system: the SH protein, the G protein, the P protein, and the M2.2 protein. And it shuts things down differently. The SH protein shuts down the NF-kappa beta pathway. The M2-2 protein shuts down MABs and my D88 pathway. The P protein and the G protein shut down RIG1 pathway. So these pathways that are being shut down are very important for the innate immune system to signal, hey, I've been infected. I need to contain the area in the tissue, and signaling needs to happen to kill off cells. That's not happening. But eventually, MPV gets cleared. The endemic version is mild. It's a mild to moderate, depending on if you have some sort of immune compromised issue. Most people don't have immune compromised issues unless you're geriatric or extremely young, because you don't have a developed immune system yet. All right. When you couple that in with a weakened immune system from the crisis that we went through in 2020, either through the inoculation or the natural infection, either way, your immune system has been trashed. Doesn't matter. So there are larger numbers of people in the world that have a weakened immune system. Now, okay, now you have this fog thing, all right, that could potentially weaken the immune system to allow for endemic things to happen, to get worse. So my gut feeling on this is that something is happening. A series of things are happening that in a post-COVID era, where even without the fog, the post-COVID era shock, for many patients, still individuals have weakened immune systems and they have compromised pulmonary issues, such as pulmonary fibrosis or COPD. All right, so you have large sections of the population that have this issue. Now, some of the immune compromised issues are permanent, some of them are transitory. This is a big part of the population can kind of like just allow time for their immune system to get better and heal. And far majority of the people will be in that category. It takes approximately 5 years to have this kind of healing process. It's fully healed after 10, but the bulk of the healing of the immune system is 5 years. All right, so if you take, when someone took their last inoculation and go out 5 years, that's about the bulk of the healing it needs for most people. But for some, there's a permanent damage to the immune system, but not a lot. All right, the bulk of the population has a weakened immune system that is transitory, but it's not transitory in 3 weeks. It's transitory in 5 to 10 years. All right, so all right, so we have this issue with the immune system, and you have other pathogens that are floating around, the hMPV, right? The norovirus. But what's more problematic is H5N1. Now, at the current genomic analysis level, D1.1 has certain features that have high affinity to the alpha-2,6 receptor. That's important because when you have high affinity to the alpha-2,6 receptor, you're increasing the probability of human-to-human transmission. The Louisiana patient genomic analysis shows that's exactly what happened. High affinity to alpha-2,6 receptor. But there's a caveat. That caveat is it's in low frequency. That means that it doesn't replicate very well. So it's low viral load. So it reduces the probability of human-to-human transmission, even though it has high affinity to alpha-2,6. But through additional mutations in the replication complex, especially in proteins that are associated with PB2, when those mutations happen, it will have higher load. It will be more frequent. They'll have higher frequency. And when you have that, then there's going to be further mutations because there's more virus, more viral load in that patient. There's going to be more mutations that lead to human-to-human transmission that will lead to additional truncation of the NA protein. When that happens, you have a very problematic influenza H5N1 for humans. So it's already honing in on the alpha-2,6 receptor in the Louisiana patient that passed away. Now, I'll get to some of the specific issues with that patient shortly, but let me just finish my thought here. So you have this alpha-2,6 honing that will eventually lead for the replicase to get more robust, that will lead for the NA protein to be truncated. And that's going to be problematic. Now, the saving grace on this is that there's no monoclonals against it. There's antivirals that are known against it. And there's inoculations that are being developed. Now, what's interesting is that RSV and hMPV are being developed by Moderna. Now, we know the problems with that. People are even mentioning emergency usage of the development for the H5H7. Now, what I want to step back. What is interesting with Moderna is that how did Moderna know to go and do in 2019? This is before COVID. Before COVID. How did Moderna know to research into RSV and hMPV? When hMPV is, it's common, but mild. Not that many cases. RSV is much, much more. Now, the reason why you want to do RSV and hMPV is that they have similar genomes, but not a lot of homology. The structure of the genome is similar, but the actual sequence of the different proteins, there's not that much homology. In some proteins, there are a decent amount, like 38% homology, but in most, there's not high. It's very low homology. But it has a similar genomic structure, has similar manifestations, and it affects similar population groups. So it does make sense to do an RSV hMPV combo in development in the pipeline for the inoculation. But why were they doing it in starting their development in 2019? It was as if Moderna knew there was going to be a respiratory situation that took place, and they thought it was going to be RSV hMPV. And it's very possible that that they switched what was going to be released, and it was then what we call SARS-CoV-2. So, but there is a connection. The point I'm making is that even back in 2019, there seems to be a connection with SARS-CoV-2, MPV, and RSV. Why? Now, and again, I don't have the answer. I'm just asking a question. But there seems to be so these pathogens that people are worried about at this moment, RSV, MPV, and H5N1, these different biotech companies are developing inoculations for it. Now, I'm against them. I think that there's not enough testing, and there's some serious problems with genomic integration, and also serious problems with the way it's manufactured and the way it's filtered. Big problems that need to be resolved. I'm not a big fan of the inoculations. I think we over-inoculate the population way too much. But the point I'm making is when it comes to H5N1, there are methods to curtail massive cases. Treatments, antiviral treatments, monoclonals, inoculations. I suspect that if all these different mutations take place, which it will happen, the question is when, but when H5N1 does track to all these mutations, you're talking about 250,000 people in 1 year that will die. That's 5 times the amount in the worst influenza typical year in the United States. The worst is about 50,000 deaths from influenza. It ranges anywhere from 12,000 to 50,000, depending on the season. But if you take the worst case and it's times 5, that's 250,000. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Is it going to be as bad as COVID? No. Sociological dynamics, it will be as bad as COVID. Pathogenically, the pathology of this, it's not going to be as bad. But the social dynamics will be as bad. All right? And just keep that in mind. Now, it's going to hone in and mutate more, especially in the summer, H5N1, okay, in the United States. In the summer months, birds are flying around, animal exposure, people are moving around, going on vacation, whatnot. There's going to be circulation of H5N1. Most likely, a lot of the cases are going to be either asymptomatic or mild. But that's all it needs to circulate and mutate and find, just through randomness, a mutation that adds to the capability that I've explained. More robustness for the replication complex. Higher affinity to the alpha-2 6 receptor, or the truncation of the the truncation of the NA protein. When that happens, you're going to have many people that get ARDS, not just regular influenza, ARDS. So when you have that, there's not a great way to treat these patients, because their pulse ox level keeps on going down and down and down as fluid is building up and up and up in their lung. They're literally drowning. How do you solve that? Now, not everyone's going to get ARDS, but it's going to happen. And there's lots of people that already have pulmonary dysfunction because of the post-COVID era. Pulmonary fibrosis to different degrees, lung capacity issues to different degrees, to COPD to different degrees. Now do you understand that there is a domino effect? So perhaps the fog exacerbates this in the near term. That causes more people to be sick. We don't know. There's no chemical analysis of it. But H5N1 is going to become problematic for humans. It will turn human-to-human transmission. That's for sure. 100% sure. The question is what year it takes place. Now, this summer is going to be where there's going to be more mutations. It's not going to be, I don't think it'll have full capability in the summer. So now you're moving into the fall where it is the influenza season, the cold season. More people will contract it. It'll be less asymptomatic and more symptomatic, with probably low human-to-human transmission. Right now, we don't have human-to-human transmission that we know of, but it'll be low human-to-human transmission, but more problematic. And then we go into 2006 and summer months, more circulation, more mutation, more honing just for human-to-human transmission. So I suspect that the more problematic year will be 2006, not 2005. That's my gut feeling on this. You'll start hearing more and more cases and more sociological worry in 2025. But in 2026, you're going to have more actual cases that are very problematic, that fall in the category of the ARDS. All right, it's not going to be the pathogenic aspects to this isn't going to be as bad as COVID. But people will die. I suspect a 5x compared to a worse, a bad death season for influenza in recent times, in recent years. Okay, it's not going to be as bad as the Spanish flu. Why? Well, the Spanish flu was in 1918. Well, we didn't have as many medical advances back then. Our understanding of being able to treat patients is way better. Our understanding to, our ability to fine tune and understand the actual mutation levels of these pathogens are far more advanced now than in 1918. So because it is a known virus, a known pathogen with lots of research on it, humans will find a solution. It's not going to be the end of the world. But people have weakened immune systems. People have weakened pulmonary systems in a post-COVID era. That's a fact. Total fact. All right. So it's the COVID era is going to exacerbate the H5N1 mutation process. All right. And the clinical manifestations of this in 2025 and in 2026. Now, maybe we're lucky and this pushes out to 2027 or 2028, but it's coming. It's not that far around the corner. Now, again, let's go back to all right, that's kind of the scientific side of this. Let's go to the metaphysical side of this. Again, it's tied to birds. Aquarius is tied to a bird, the owl. So there is a judgment that's taking place. There's a plague that's happening. Now, I personally think that because humans have decided, in the United States, there are individuals that decided not to shut down these laboratories that were being cursed because of it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that the decisions that humans have made in recent years is bringing down a metaphysical curse because of the way we are. If we really philosophically think about this, many humans don't deserve to live because of the way they live their life, right? If you look at it like, biblical kind of uh, um, scale of good and bad. Most people would not fit on the good side. It's on the bad side of the scale. So, you know, there's a hatred in the population, or there's a hatred in humankind. There's a lack of compassion, lack of empathy, and um, because of that, maybe these metaphysical curses are taking place. On top of, you know, maybe mankind is being cursed because mankind has been doing things it shouldn't be doing in the scientific realm. You know, making super, super pathogens in the laboratory that would be low probability events in the natural realm, making chimeras and doing all these things. Maybe this is part of the curse of mankind doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Now, again, you know, this is a philosophical thought. You know, is mankind being cursed for its own actions in the scientific realm and in just human to human interaction in society? I mean, the lack of regard to people's lives is just like out of control in New York. I mean, perfect example is look at what happened with the subway fire incident. Horrific, totally horrific. Now, to digress on this topic, but to prove my point with artificial intelligence and news that you can't trust anymore, and we're right at that edge. The initial reports of the subway fire victim was a 22-year-old that was a Ph.D. student. This was being promulgated on X. I thought it was true. Many people thought it was true. When they did the forensics and, you know, did the dental records, and eventually the investigators found that this person was homeless and was much older than 22. I think she was in her 50s. And so the original reports on X are just totally wrong. So we're moving into in an era where it's like we can't even trust the posts that are being shared. So so you get back. There's this infestation. I did a video months ago about this. It was probably in the summer of last year. This infestation in social media. There's a meanness. There's a lack of regard of civility. And just recently, Elon Musk said, you know what? Maybe we should make the post a little bit, I'm paraphrasing, I don't know exactly how he said it, but, you know, less hateful and just more civil. So he's even picking up on something that I was picking up 6 months ago. Now, I took that thought that I had 6 months ago, and also I said, you know, in the summer of last year, that this infestation is a fib sequence from the actual expulsion from the Garden of Eden. So what happened was, so this is kind of metaphysical. So we're seeing it in our realm, this hate in social media that leads to a strengthening of negative forces, of evil forces. So when the expulsion took place out of the Garden of Eden because of the original sin, what is happening is good and evil are entangled. There's an entanglement that takes place. And over many, many generations, many, many years, and many, many eras, we're trying to untangle it. And in the age of Aquarius, now we're getting into the astrology aspect to this, but in the age of Aquarius, this disentanglement is taking place. But when you look at the internet, you look at computers, you look at social media, it's all based on a physical platform that involves servers, wires, wrapped together, entangled. And there is this evilness that is inherent in this entanglement with the technology. So when people use these social media platforms, if someone is easy to persuade spiritually, then they move into a realm of hate and destruction and infighting. You can see even infighting within the MAGA movement, right? You have certain known channels fighting another known channel, and there's lots of infighting. There's infight. Look at the infighting that was taking place with subscribers on X when Elon wanted to promote H1B visas. All right. Now I'm against H1B visas, but I'm not like, over the top and hate against Elon Musk because of it. But you have some channels on X and YouTube and Rumble and whatever that are demonizing when you have any disagreement in thought against someone else. This is the evilness of the entanglement. This is what Satan wants. And the thing is that people that build businesses that allow for further entanglement seem to be extremely successful people. Now, on the surface, people would see, well, that person's really successful because they built this, tech business or whatever. But if you go, well, why are they successful? At the surface, people would say, God bless them. God bless Zuckerberg. Let's say Zuckerberg as the example. How did Zuckerberg start Facebook? He stole it. It started with theft. So, and then it not only did it start with theft from the twins, from his Harvard colleagues, but it ended up being theft of one's identity and one's information so he could monetize. So Zuckerberg and Facebook could monetize and send it to advertisers to make money. So it all starts with theft. Well, that's not from good. That's from the side of evil. And so Facebook, grows, gets more users, more people are using it, right? There's more entanglement. Some people are sharing, pictures of maybe a newborn or their dog or whatever, right? And, it's very benign. But then eventually it gets into hate, slowly gets into hate. Now, not everybody's like that, but many people are. And it says, then it starts getting into talking bad about people, what we would call lashon hara. So, and so this talking bad of people is not a positive thing. It's not what God wants, for sure. Doesn't make a society stable. It makes a society unstable. But when people create systems that allow for this entanglement of good and evil, and to allow people to talk bad about people, to demonize people, to be childish, these people that built these systems get rewarded financially. So there's an energy force from Satan that is rewarding this kind of investment. Maybe Satan is Wall Street, who knows? But the thing is that there's a rewarding that's taking place to allow for the entanglement. Now we're moving into the age of Aquarius where we're trying to untangle this. Now, how does this tie into you can't trust news anymore? When you can't trust news because of AI generation or because of orchestrated false reporting like Smith Modernization Act, but just there are people that just post stuff that are not, that are fake, that's what they do. When more and more people see that you can't trust it, perhaps what happens is that people stop using it. And so there is a sociological disentanglement of good and evil, and people move towards good. So we might be at the cusp of it, because of the age of Aquarius. We're at the cusp of this disentanglement that has been taking on for years, and all the hate and destruction. So I'm for freedom of speech, but if you really want to be honest about this, uh, there are these social media type platforms have created a lot of animosity within its user base, and because of that, I think that it's not social, it's not socially healthy. It's not individually healthy, but at the societal level, it's not healthy. And so what happens is that people will go to a store and steal something, and sometimes they live stream it. And that's kind of insane, right? It's almost as if it's like some sort of sorority or some fraternity initiation or something. They do these outrageous things and publicize it. Uh, it just The society is just not going in the right direction. So because of this, don't be surprised if plagues happen. Maybe we created it ourselves, literally in the laboratory, but also metaphysically because of the way we are. So that's kind of my take of the conversation that I had with Gail and some of the add-ons as I was speaking during this video. That, okay, to summarize, perhaps what we're seeing in the world is a combination of being metaphysically cursed because of the way mankind is, and mankind doing things that it shouldn't be doing in the scientific realm in the laboratories. Now, specifically for human MPV, right now it's only for very young pediatrics and the geriatrics, and immune compromised in the general population, where it's problematic. Problem is that China isn't sharing information. There hasn't been a whole genome sequence of what's going on in China, Malaysia, and India, if it's related. So we need genomic information, whole genomic sequencing, to understand if the G and the F protein is mutating. And if it is, for the ones that don't know, the G protein is attaching to a receptor. It's the heparan sulfate receptor, and the F protein helps the fusion process into the cell. Is that mutating in such a way where it's more robust? There's higher affinity, maybe even a new receptor. Is this a lab leak? Was there manipulation? I mean, laboratories are manipulating MPV. We know this. They publish it in the general, So is there something that's going on? Maybe they don't want to do a genomic full sequence because it would prove that it's a lab leak. But data needs to be provided to understand what's going on with MPV. So that's a big question mark. There's 3 regions that we know of: India, China, Malaysia, that have a problem. And that was as of yesterday. Maybe things have evolved and become worse, overnight. I don't know. Now with H5N1, it's mutated, and there's a patient in Louisiana that died from contracting H5N1. Now there's some caveats. The person was older than 65, contracted from wild birds, has the D1.1 variant and had comorbidity issues. The person had ARDS. The person had a severe version of this. Now, is it because of the comorbidities? Is it because of those comorbidities that the person ended up having such pulmonary distress? Probably. But when they sequenced D1.1 from the patient from Louisiana, it had the high affinity alpha-2/6 receptor, but at low frequency. So there's a worrisome side to this story, and there is a positive side to this story. The worrisome side is the person died, and H5N1 has high affinity alpha-2/6 receptor now in that patient. The positive side to it is that it's in low frequency and the patient had comorbidities. So the chances of someone relatively healthy having the same kind of reaction to exposure, it's probably less, there's less probability of that. But over time, it will happen. So, how fast do these new cases pop up? Where you hear more and more contraction from the wild birds, and eventually more pulmonary distress. But this will, H5N1, influenza viruses mutate rapidly. Same thing with HIV. So for different reasons, HIV is retrovirus and it doesn't have a check mechanism during the retrovirusing mechanism, and it mutates that way. And then you have high load, and then influenza has genomic drift and also genomic shift because of the segmented genome. And the replication complex causes errors. So you have errors through the replication complex plus genomic shift and drift because of the segmented genome. But the thing here is that it mutates fast. So it doesn't take that long for it to eventually get to human-to-human transmission. So that's kind of an overview of it. We don't know what the fog was. No one has, that I know of, no one has done a chemical analysis of it. Now, maybe it's published somewhere and someone knows the chemical analysis. Please send me a link and I'll read it. All right. And maybe I'll change my mind on this. But, but the thing is that we don't know what it is, but I do know this. In New York, people are getting sick. People are getting sick. There's a surge of SARS-CoV-2. There's a surge of rhinovirus. There's a surge of RSV. There's a surge of influenza A. Now, it is the cold season. But the thing is that you need to get prepared. And I've said exactly how to do it. I can't tell you exactly in this video. So in the next video and other videos that I've published, pay attention to what I'm saying. I'm sure that if you look around at your work, at your household, around your community, people are sick, all right? It's a little bit, from my observation of what I am seeing in New York, it's worse than last year. Now, the data is saying that the number of cases of influenza and of SARS-CoV-2 are lower compared to last year, all right? But there is a surge that's taking place post-Thanksgiving. Now, does that mean that it'll surge more and it'll be slightly above last year? But last season's comparison, who knows? Probably not. But what I am seeing, the people in my community, all right, in New York, what I'm seeing is that more people have cold-like symptoms with a longer lasting pulmonary issue that's like bronchitis, right on the edge of bronchitis pneumonia. That's what I'm saying. Now, maybe other areas of the country are different, but something is happening. Now, I still am telling people, hey, people's immune systems are down in the post-COVID era. Many people are slowly healing out of that. And there are many people that have pulmonary dysfunction because of the COVID era, and it's a spectrum. So, just pay attention. And since you have some time, as these things start to emerge over time, just because your area doesn't have surges doesn't mean you won't see a surge later. Doesn't mean that you won't be exposed to H5N1 down the road in 2025 or 2026. You're lucky. Take that luck and be prepared. Boost up your immune system. You can do it. I tell you exactly how to do it. So that's my take on this. Please help support my work. This video and thousands of videos that I have are for free. And it's through people getting the products on my store, sharing the links, subscribing to the channel, donating, super chatting, all this stuff, all of it helps. All right. So please go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. It's on the home page at the very bottom. Just click the links and you can donate 3 different ways. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's through the donations and the Patreon subscribers that allows me to do these videos for free. Again, I'm sharing a lot of information and I'm giving you my perspective. And, some of it's in a humorous way. Some of it is, a very down to brass tacks way of conveying the information. But the thing is that I am trying to get people to realize you can get healthy, to be prepared if something does happen, and that there's something changing metaphysically in our environment. All right. And this has been written down for thousands of years. And it's kind of interesting to see the transition from getting out of Pisces and into Aquarius and how this is all lining up with these older texts. It's kind of weird. And how could someone 2,000 years ago have known where we're at in technology and being able to have instantaneous communication? Very strange, very, very strange. So, but that's the age that we're in. So it's through the help that I can convey my opinions on these things. I also show you what's going on in the financial markets and how how to kind of like prepare yourself when certain things happen. And again, all of this, the pathogenic coverage, the financial coverage are tied with world events. And it's through your help that I can do this. Please share the links. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please follow me on X. I have 2 channels on X and I have GETTR. This is a way I can get around the censorship. You can watch live streams on YouTube, on Rumble, and on my website. You can listen to podcasts on my website. You can listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Podomatic. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So there's lots of ways to help. Be part of the WhatsApp group. And again, pay attention to what I do to improve my health. So thank you for listening. Maybe this was a little long-winded, I'm not really sure, but I think it was informative. Thank you for listening to this video and listening on X Spaces, and have a nice day.